Welcome back to How to Play Stellaris. Last time we went over the basics. How do I go into space? What do I do there? How do I survey stuff? And whilst all of that is really important, I do recommend for you to go and check out that video, it is also really important to understand how the underlying economy system of the game works, because it can be pretty complicated and a little bit frustrating sometimes to understand what's going on, but we're here today to alleviate all those issues. Today, we're going to talk about the economy and how the underlying systems work. First of all, we are in space. We have a little bit of a grown empire so far, and we have 3 whole planets. We have Alpha Centauri, we have Sol, and Sirius. All of those planets, or at least all of those systems, can be found in the outliner and over here, and essentially we'll see that we've got 3 worlds here of the continental variety. However, there is a couple of icons on screen, and those are the suitcases, the little houses, and the population icon. The population icon means that there is overcrowding, which means there is not enough housing. The suitcases means that the pops are migrating to other planets, and the housing means that we can build a building. And these are all things that we're going to need to keep in mind for our stuff. However, in the outliner, we're going to need to do one thing first, and we need to go to the little cog wheel up on the top right, click it, and then go all the way down here and click on Show Colony Designation Icons. Believe me, it will make life a lot easier. If we toggle between back and forth, we will see that the planet will change from its what you would normally use as a visualization icon to a styled icon on what type of planet this is. Because we're going to be talking quite a lot about types today, and that is going to be rather important. First of all, we have Earth. Earth is your capital world in this particular case. A capital world is always very important because it is the core of your empire and also where most of your population is. And any planet is usually divided in these districts. Now, districts are identified as these little squares in this top area, and they are essentially indicators of how much space there is for a certain type of resources. And those resources are categorized in city districts, which generate housing as well as special jobs. We'll go into jobs in a little bit. We've got industrial districts, which will generate consumer goods and alloys. We got ourselves generator districts, which generate energy credits. We got the mining districts, which will generate minerals. And finally, the agricultural districts, which will generate food. For any sort of economical development, the districts are by far the most important thing and really tie your economy together. We have buildings as well, but we will get into those a little bit later. So, let's take a look here. What can we do? Well, as you see right now is that our economy is relatively stable. We have a reasonable amount of minerals, we have food, we have okay alloys, we have a good amount of energy credits, but consumer goods are running out. If we have any more population, we're going to run out of consumer goods, or at least the amount is no longer going to grow, and that is a problem. Therefore, it would be a good idea at this time to build more consumer goods. And how do we do that? Well, we can go to Earth. Let's say that we want to build more consumer goods. Well, what we do is we go to the industrial district and spend 500 minerals to build another industrial district. And whilst that is going on, we can go ahead a little bit deeper on what that actually does. Because there is this tab down here called population. And under population, there is the icon for consumer goods, artisans to be specific. Artisans are a type of person, or a pop as it's generally referred to in the game, and essentially what they do is they generate consumer goods. But because they are working in that district, it also means that they are working together with metallurgists, and metallurgists will generate alloys. So if you are generating a industrial district, you will have both a production of both consumer goods and alloys, and that's always good. However, there is a cost to this. First of all, you will need a free pop, which we do, and we'll go into that shortly. And on top of that, we need minerals. In this particular case, we need 12 minerals to generate 10 consumer goods, and 5 alloys. As this continues onwards, the industrial district will start filling up, and we can go to the population tab, and let's quickly go to the artisans over here. As soon as this is finished, it should generate more of these. Almost there. And there you have it. Instantly, as soon as a district is built, we have these consumer goods being generated by these artisans. But also the metallurgist will also be building here, which is nice because we get more alloys. In addition, instantly we will see that we will now have more consumer goods being generated up here. +8. So we went from +1 to +8 by building a singular district, which is rather nice. You know, it's a nice little bonus. Usually it's a good idea to take a look at the resources that you need and building the required district in order to fulfill that need. What you also need to keep in mind, however, is that your population, as in those pops that I was talking about earlier, is required to work those districts. So if we go into the population tab right now, we will see that there are some jobs available, and that has to do with the workers at the bottom. So the population of planets is distributed in 3 categories. There is the workers, essentially the farmers, your miners, technicians that generate energy, etc. We have the specialists, the people who generate alloys, consumer goods, science, etc. And all the way at the top, there is the rulers, the politicians, etc. Now, what is important to know here is that whenever you generate a job that is available in a strata, which is what this is called, this specialist category. Let's say you generate a job here and you have space for it, but you don't have enough pops. What will happen? Well, what will happen is that pops from the lower class will move in to fill that job. So let's say that we have no pops available on this planet right now, which we don't. Let's say that we build another district here. It means that we won't have any unemployed pops in the pool, but the workers will immediately fill that gap. And this is good, but it's also kind of bad in a way. Because if you overdo this, let's say that I want to go ahead and say, hey, I want to build a lot of alloys right away. I'm going to go ahead and just build, like, screw it. I'm just going to build 3 additional industrial districts because, hey, it will generate me 6 more jobs. 6 more jobs that will be generating consumer goods as well as alloys. That's 30 consumer goods. It's 15 more alloys that I can pump into my fleets. Whilst on one hand, that would be a good idea, on the other hand, that means that the population that is generating all the basic resources, i.e. the energy, the minerals, and the food, will no longer be working on those categories. And I can illustrate this by simulating things a little bit, because we can reduce the amount of jobs that are active right now. So let's say that 6 of those are going to be farmers, 2 miners, and 2 technicians move up to those jobs. So what will happen to our economy? So we can hit this little plus button over here, and the plus minus, and immediately you will see that jobs will become available. But we will instantly lose a fair chunk of our resources, which is something that we don't necessarily want. If you want to min-max, that's fine. If you feel that, hey, I've got way more food than I need right now, which if the month ticks over, that will probably show itself. We're back at 29, and I want these workers to work somewhere else, then you can go ahead and unemploy them and build yourself another district. And that is essentially the gist of that. It is very useful to know that you can min-max the amount of workers that you have available in particular areas, but it's also really important that you do not overbuild your districts, because all of your population that are working and generating all these basic resources that you need in order to build these specialized resources are going to move in, and all of a sudden you don't have any resources that can be generated. In addition to that, whilst workers will easily move into a higher strata will not easily move into a lower one. This means that you cannot very easily min-max this. Let's say that you say, okay, I want to have a bunch of farmer jobs currently filled up, and I'm going to unemploy a bunch of my artisans that are generating consumer goods. It will take time for them to transition into these jobs, but there's a way around this. Let's say that I want to have a bigger focus on, say, farmers. Let's say that I want all of those farmer jobs full at all times. So let's say that we go for a plus here. You can see we now have 5 out of 6 farmer jobs available. Let's say that we need food, and we need food now, but we don't need minerals all that much. Well, we can go and unemploy one of our miners, and it will automatically move things back and forth. Or, if you don't want to min-max things, you can go ahead and click on the icon, and it will give it a little star, which means it will automatically fill up these jobs based on the available workers on the planet. So clerks will move into the farmer jobs, miners, technicians, etc. So that's a good way of min-maxing things and trying to specialize things a little bit. Speaking of which, speaking of specialization, there's also such things as planetary specializations. So we have a planet here. This is Alpha Centauri Prime. Alpha Centauri Prime is something that we colonized very, very recently. There is currently workers available, but there is no jobs on the planet because we have built no districts. However, this planet looks to be very good when it comes to agricultural districts. There's quite a lot of them available on the planet. Mining, not so much. Energy is so-so. This will be a perfect agricultural world. And that means that we can go ahead and build an agricultural district on this planet. It will start building, and as soon as it's done, this worker will automatically move into this position in order to fill that job. And of course, over time, as more pops grow, then they will start filling more and more jobs there. However, it's usually a good idea to specialize planets on a singular thing. If you have a lot of agricultural districts in one place, it's usually a good idea to fill all of those up in order to get a food planet, because you definitely will need a food planet. Now, in order to make that even more efficient, there is this button here called Designations. Now, what you can do here is click from a big list of things and basically say, hey, I want to turn this into a certain type of world. And this could be a mining world, a generator world, industrial worlds, worlds that focus on alloys or consumer goods, etc. In this particular case, we want an agri world. So if we click this, you will see that the icon will immediately change, and it will tell us that, hey, farmers that work on this world will get a 25% output bonus. That means if we have a lot of farms, all of those farmers will all generate 25% more than usual, plus those districts will be built significantly faster. And in the outliner, we now have the icon for a agri-world sitting next to Alpha Centauri, which is great because it basically means that we can now easily see what kind of planet this is. So, the job has been, the place has been fulfilled. We can take a look at the population tab, and we can see that yes, there is a farmer working here, and they are generating 10 food, which goes straight into our pool, which means that we can feed more people. Now, we have another planet here. This is cool name. For those of you who watched the previous episode, you will know that you saw that we built this one. This particular planet is very good on energy, but also on minerals. In this particular case, we have a lot of energy. We're generating plus 96 energy, which is awesome. Minerals could be a little bit better. So we're just going to go ahead and build a mineral district here in order to improve things. And we are also going to turn this into a mining world, because mining districts will now be built quicker. And on top of that, miners as well as strategic resources will now be produced even faster, so we can get more and more stuff. So this district is now online, this pop is now working, and we can take a look at the worker tab. There we go, we have 2 miners on this planet, and they are just mining away. However, we currently have no jobs available and no unemployed, which means that it's a good time to build yet another district. If this is set to 0, and if this is set to 0, it means nobody has any job. We have 100% employment, which means that a pop will grow sooner rather than later, and it's probably a good time to build yet another mining district. Now, we talked about something else earlier as well, and that is overcrowding. Now, every single planet has a housing modifier. Available housing basically means that a certain amount of pops need a certain amount of housing. Every single district generates a certain amount of housing as well, with the city district generating the most. And the city district in this particular case generates 5 housing, which means it will have enough space for 5 pops. But more importantly, it also generates a clerk job as well as a building slot. Now we're just going to go ahead and build a city district here, and as soon as the mining district is done, we will be able to see what happens there. Because I want to be talking a little bit about buildings. We've been talking about districts for a little while, but now it's time to talk about buildings. And whilst this is going on, we're just going to go ahead and go back to Earth to take a look at our feature list. This seems to be clear. Seems to be something that we need to work on. And cool name, of course. It's got crystalline caverns on it. Strategic resources, always nice. Which makes it even more interesting that it is a mining world, so we can get even more crystals, because crystals are important as well. But we'll get to that in a little bit. This is the first contact. We can ignore that for now. So whilst that is building, we're just going to go ahead and continue expanding our little empire here, our little fledgling empire, because it is also time to talk a little bit about resources in space. Because this particular thing is still building, so we have a little bit of time to talk about space resources. So we have minerals in space, right? So we've got energy, we've got minerals being generated here, even more minerals over here. It is a cornucopia of resources in space. Overall, getting resources in space is usually a little bit more cost-effective than using jobs. And a lot of the time, we can get a lot more resources from space, except for food, because food doesn't grow in the vacuum of space, sadly enough. However, that does not mean that we should always go straight for the things that we want to build. So let's say we have our construction ship here, right? Let's say that we don't have enough minerals in the bank, and we need to prioritize on what we actually want to get right now. Let's say that we only have 600 minerals, and 500 of those need to go into a district because population is about to roll over, and we don't have enough space for them. So we have a choice. Do we spend 90 minerals or 100 minerals on a mining station that will gain us 2 minerals a month, or one that generates us 4 minerals a month? Usually it's a good idea to prioritize the ones that generate 4 minerals a month if you can. So obviously you can just right click on the system and just build all of them, but it usually is a good idea to prioritize the 6 or higher instances. Like for instance, this one generates 6 minerals. You kind of want to get your hands out on those first, because the rate of return is a lot better on those. There are strategic resources in space as well. They are special resources that will help you with some more advanced buildings. We will get to those in a separate video. In the meantime, it looks like Cool Name's City District is about to come online. There it is. Keep an eye on this little locked building slot. There you go. So as soon as you build a city district, it will automatically unlock a building slot. And what can you do with a building? Well, buildings have a wide variety of abilities. For instance, we have an administrative office, which will generate Unity, which is the resource that kind of represents societal change. However, in order to use this building, we need 2 workers, and on top of that, we will need 4 consumer goods. And on top of that, this is a bureaucrat job, which means it's a specialist job, which means, again, that pops from the worker strata will automatically move to it because they are specialists. So let's say that we quickly build a administrative office here, and that's going to take a few hundred days. And as soon as this pops in, we'll see what it actually does. But yeah, we can see it on the right side here, how fast it is going. It is at 40%. Some of this usually takes a little bit of time, but it gives you the ability to move around a little bit. And poof, there they are. The bureaucrats are here, and immediately those jobs get filled. We lose some miners, and that is essentially that. Now, if you would unemploy these guys, they would automatically become completely unemployed, because they cannot go anywhere. And that is problematic, because they are bureaucrats, and we want to get them to work wherever we can. And specialists usually have the issue of not being able to migrate to other positions, especially if they've been working in those for a very long time. However, if they cannot find jobs, they will go to a different planet where a job in that role is available to them, which is kind of nice for them, I would say, right? Yeah. Pretty much. So there is a wide variety of buildings available. Alloy foundries, which generate additional metallurgist jobs, plus at the higher levels they will generate even more per pop. Same thing for consumer goods. Commercial zones, don't build them. Holo theaters, which will generate amenities. Amenities are basically things that will keep your population happy, and it represents day-to-day needs of the population. So these amenities are basically toast. Let's call them toast, shall we? Yeah, let's do that. If you want to build one of these, it's always a good idea to keep your amenities as high as possible, because the higher your amenities, the more happy your population, the more stable your population, the more resources they generate. But wait, there's more. Let's say that you have a very, very good economy and you've got resources coming out of your behind. Well, there is good ways of spending those resources that are not empire-based. Let's say that you... Let's throw a hypothetical out here, right? Let's say that you have almost no food or anything like that, and your entire food population is not working. They're not doing anything at the moment. We're just going to go ahead and disable all of our farmers just to illustrate this here example. And as you can see, we are now running at minus food. So there's a couple of things that can happen here. We're just actually going to go ahead and wait for all of our food to go down to 0. Because something will happen, something that you will need to deal with when it comes to the economy. We have 0 food now, and in the next month, we will get ourselves a situation. And this will be outlined on the screen. It's called a shortage. If we go on and click on the button here, we will see that we have a food shortage. And we're already at stage 1 of said food shortage, which means that pops are not happy, they're not growing, and robots will not grow. And this will have knock-on effects. If you don't do anything about this, then this will continue going and going and going until pops are super unhappy. We have 0 growth, and our empire will go completely bankrupt. We will be defaulted. All of our costs will go up by 25%. We will lose most of our influence. We lose most of our unity. Our ships won't do anything, and it's a modifier for 10 years. It's a long time. So we want to avoid this at all costs, and this can be a death spiral. And we need to make sure that as soon as we hit stage 1, that we get out of this. So what we can do here is we can go ahead and invest in farmers, where we will spend resources from energy into farmers to make sure that our farmers will generate the resources that we need. And is that going to be enough? No, most likely not, because we're still at minus 17 after this period, because we don't have any farmers. But we do have a lot of energy. So how can we offset this in the meantime? Well, we can go ahead and click on the food icon, which will take us to the galactic market. Considering we have a lot of energy, we can convert that energy into food, which will allow us to float our economy for a little while until we have our farmers essentially set up again. And as soon as this happens, then we will see the arrow moving on here to go back to 0. And essentially, as soon as it hits 0, the shortages modifier will get removed. In addition, what we can also do is we can make sure that all those farmer jobs, that we can get more of them, essentially, and basically try to get as many food resources up and running so that we get out of this here default. Let's take a look, and we should be almost out of here. And there we go. So, and that's how you offset a situation when it comes to shortages. You never want to run into a shortage. It's a really, really bad idea. You want to avoid it at all costs. And make sure that let's say you don't have enough energy. Good. All right. So we're going to need to sell some alloys. Alloys are worth a lot. We all of a sudden have a lot of energy that we can spend on those resources that we need. 10,000 energy, 10,000 food. Good. All right. That's nice. Now we have the resources to go ahead. Sometimes when we don't have enough consumer goods, we may need to go into our policy button, which is on the left side of the screen over here, and adjust our economic policy. Let's say that we're not generating enough consumer goods, but we're generating way too many alloys. Instead, from a mixed economy or a militarized economy, we can swap to a civilian economy, where our consumer goods will be produced more at the cost of alloys. So for instance, if we would turn this into a civilian economy, we won't be able to change this for another 10 years. Instantly, after the month ticks over, we will get enough more consumer goods. But we won't get more alloys. We'll actually have less alloys because the focus is just not there. And these are also things that you need to keep in mind whilst playing the game. These options together are very important when it comes to keeping track of things and balancing your economy properly. And don't be afraid to sell goods to float other aspects of your systems. Sometimes you just don't have enough consumer goods. Sell off other stuff to just buy them. It's very important that you keep an eye on that. If you have too many goods as well and you just don't want to go into the market constantly, you can click on add new monthly trade, sell a good, let's say food. If you hit control, you can go by tens in this plus button, shift by 100, and if you hit both control shift, 1,000. So essentially what you can do here is you can sell goods automatically every single month. You hit OK and you will now sell 9 food a month. And that will go on infinitely until you run out of food, essentially. Or if the trade modifiers is no longer relevant and you literally cannot get any energy for it because somebody has dumped food on the market en masse or something along those lines. But yeah, make sure you understand how to float your economy. It's really important. And yeah, in general, that is a very basic overview of how the economy in Stellaris works. So let's quickly recap. In general, don't overbuild your districts. Don't build more than you need. It is very important that you do. Otherwise, you're going to end up with large resources that you've used on a district that could have been spent somewhere else. Same thing goes for buildings, because if you end up with a ton of specialists, all your districts will empty out and you will lose a lot of raw resources that you need to support those districts. In addition, designations of planets, make sure that you set them and that you have a good overview of what is going on within your empire, and specialize your worlds. Make sure you do so, because there is a lot of really powerful technology in the game that really allows you to boost your overall performance of your specialist worlds. For instance, let's say that you want to turn this into a mineral world. You can build a special building later in the game that allows you to boost your output for minerals even more, which is incredibly important. And yeah, essentially that. City districts, build them in order to get more building slots, but try not to overbuild them. It's always better to go for raw resources. Build them when you need housing or when you need a building slot. And finally, this is something that I have not covered. Your capital world is usually used to balance out whatever you need on the spot. So let's say that I need energy. We can just quickly build an energy district right now in order to balance that out, because we don't have a specialized energy world. It's also usually a really good idea to fill up your homeworld with research labs, because research labs will generate research, which will allow you to progress the game a lot faster. This has been a general overview of how the economy in Stellaris works. If you feel that this has been useful and that you feel that, hey, I've learned something today, feel free to put a comment down below and that says, hey, I understand the economy now. If you want to see more of these types of videos, there's one on your screen right now. It goes over the basics of the game with a playlist next to it where you can find a full overview of all the expansions of the game that I have reviewed, with a good analysis on whether or not it is worth your time. In the meantime, we're going to go and wrap that up here. I want to thank my patrons for making this video possible. It wouldn't be... I couldn't do it without you, but we're going to go and wrap it up here. Next time, we're going to be talking about First Contact, because there are aliens next door, and how do we deal with them, and diplomacy, and espionage. Until next time, take good care of yourselves, and as always, each other.